I took an eighth of an ounce with Loki, my boyfriend at the time. Having tripped shrooms before, I thought I knew what I was in for. An eighth didn't seem like all that much. I'd previously done more than twice that and been fine. I was humbled. I ate them with peanut butter and applesauce, taking spoonfuls of each to counteract the revolting, musty taste. I also drank a little straight lemon juice, which Loki said would make the effect stronger. He wasn't kidding. Within about 30 minutes or so, time had lost all meaning, and I had to lie down. My first sign that things were changing was when I placed the palm of my hand on the wall to touch a picture of Emperor Palpatine on my Star Wars poster, and my fingers elongated, blurring into the now fluctuating surface. I saw the black hooded figure as the presence of evil, and I realized that, in my fight against the Catholic Church, I legitimately was up against evil. That summer, I was trying to advocate for students and teachers, for COVID safety, and my school was not happy with me. I was waiting to hear if I would be fired or not. I knew that this trip would be a powerful one. This trip would be a battle for my soul. The sensation was more like being drunk than I had ever experienced with hallucinogens. I curled up on the couch and was instantly transported to other realms when I closed my eyes. We were watching a show about ancient aliens, just for fun, but then I thought that I might be entering into extraterrestrial perspectives. Before going down the rabbit hole, I had drawn a tarot card to be my guiding theme. This is something I like to do when I trip, to give food for thought and potential for insight. I pulled the Chariot, reversed. From my understanding, the reversed Chariot represents losing hold of the reins, being dragged, chaos, your apple cart overturned. I interpreted it, before eating the mushrooms, as my life at the time being the chariot racing wildly and needing to turn it upright. I was reminded of the chariot my students and I had, the one that lived under the stairs at my school. I thought the trip might recenter me, enable me to be a better charioteer after I came back from the other world. Little did I know that the trip itself was about to be the chariot reversed, total loss of control. The walls began to breathe and dance and shapeshift. I wanted to look around, to take in the way the blinds on the window were waving in fractals, and admire how their plain white surfaces were now refracting rainbows, prism-like, now opals, but I had to close my eyes and lie still, fighting an urge to vomit. In the darkness behind my eyelids, reality split into squares, each filled with lights and colors and patterns of a geometric, surreal nature. Visuals I had never known were possible. Other dimensions? I was soaring through space, and it seemed that maybe all the creatures of all the worlds were showing me how they perceived their surroundings. It was as if my vision were breaking up into different screens on a television, displaying multiple channels at once, with the ability to jump between them quickly and efficiently. This went on for some time. I was as weak as a sleepy kitten and could not keep my eyes open. I had never felt so utterly incapacitated by any other drug, not even the LSD that made me go through all that from before. I did not need to open my eyes to see these visions, though. They were simultaneously internal and external. My own individual body had ceased to exist. There were only the many layers and levels of psychedelic shapes and patterns. Technicolor, more colorful than I'd known color could be, almost like there were new shades in between the shades I was acquainted with. The intensity was a bit frightening, but mostly exhilarating. I told Loki that these fellows, meaning the mushrooms, had come in peace. I trusted them and wanted to learn what they wanted to teach me. I felt open. Eventually, Loki, whose lap I had my head in, said that he wanted to go lie down in the bed. I tried to follow, but couldn't stand. He helped me to my feet, and I staggered into the bedroom, where we turned on a lamp with a stained glass light bulb in it that sent waves of soft tie-dye color rippling across the ceiling. Everything was alive. The floor was moving, creating characters in the grain. I saw a wolf, a woman with a Day of the Dead painted face and flowers in her hair, a giraffe, a shaman, flowing and coming toward me. I feared I was about to lose my grip on reality and the visions would take over. What would appear? All hell might be about to break loose. We curled up with a soft gray fleecy blanket. Loki selected a chill step music mix recording with voiceover from Alan Watts on YouTube. As I stared up, transfixed by how intricate and interesting the undulating designs that could appear in something as banal as a popcorn ceiling were, the revelations began to unfold. Loki also watched the ceiling there with me, often holding my hand, but my experience was my own, as was his. He said after the fact that it got him to do a lot of soul searching about what kind of person he wanted to be. The brilliant, soothing words of Alan Watts, a writer I'd loved since childhood, rushed over me, and profound truths began streaming into my consciousness. Yes, of course. I was the ultimate reality, and the ultimate reality was me. The green net appeared. It was a three-dimensional matrix of otherworldly green light. I can only describe it as a glowing grid, looking like something from the Matrix. However, it was also neon vines. I was part of this web of life. A giant mob of queens, witches, goddesses, ancestors, musicians, writers, artists, mentors, ancient priestesses, druids, rebels, punk rock poets, brave souls, and friends past and present appeared in the glowing green web. The beings looked like shining orbs, with shimmery, iridescent outlines of their features. I saw that these orbs were the points of light connected in the matrix. They were mostly female, except I thought for sure I saw Tom Petty and David Bowie in there. The emerald light of these interlocked beings filled the room and was the most gorgeous, life-affirming, joyous thing I had ever seen. The thought of it still makes me smile on a bad day, helps me keep going. I had the sense that these beings existed outside of time and space, that they were something like spirits, but more. Was I seeing their eternal essences? I also had the sense that they belonged to the green energy web, and that both they and I were permanently in this grid, even if I couldn't see it without magic. I knew that I would be all right, whether I lived or died, because the web was beyond the boundaries of the physical world. I was filled with gratitude for these benevolent, loving beings from throughout history. They wanted me to know that I was always connected to them, that they would come to me if ever I needed them. Boudica, the Celtic warrior queen who almost brought the Romans to their knees, one of my heroines, was there, and so was Morgan Le Fay, another personal favorite. Morgan had valiantly defended the pagans against the mindless onslaught of the Crusades, and, like Lilith from the Bible, who was also present, Morgan had been much maligned. There were so many of them. They knew that I had felt all alone, that I had been losing hope, that I was scared, that Trump's America was a grim, dehumanizing place. They wanted to assure me that they were there for me, and always had been, always would be. They told me that they loved me as their precious child. They told me that I had done well. They told me that they were so proud of me. Someone was proud of me? All these beings were proud of me? Was I even proud of myself? I often felt like I did nothing but make mistakes. But I felt worthy in their presence. I felt adored. They had such big grins when they looked at me, as if I delighted them just by being myself. They were all there in the web with me, and I knew I could draw on their strength at any time. I experimented with sending energy to where individual orbs appeared in the green net. It was as if I could see their location on a spiritual GPS. I could beam love to them and know that they received it and feel their love radiating back. They tried to show me how it worked. They gave me a zoomed-out view of the green web, reminiscent of Google Earth. It was as large as the Earth, as large as the whole universe, and had a distinctly feminine, nurturing quality, like a lush tomato plant. Some of the lights, which were all other beings, were blinking or dim. They needed help. That was how you knew where to send your love and energy. You should get still, search your feelings, as with the Force from Star Wars, and find out who needed help. The beings told me that it should go back and forth, that I should ask to receive support when I needed it, but I should make sure to do for others when they needed it. Sometimes my light would be brighter, and I could spare some extra love. Sometimes mine would be dim, and they would come to me. I asked the beings my other great question. Is there a God? Without hesitating, they said, of course there's a God, and of course it's you. The answer was swift and surprising, with an almost rude impatience, but I welcomed the firmness of the response after a lifetime of silence. They said it adamantly, that there was a God and that I was God. Then they clarified. So was everyone else. The great play is that you are God, and so is everything around you. Whatever I did to another person, I did to myself and the universe simultaneously. They told me that separation was an illusion, that there was no separation. I was all that was, and all that was me. They told me to think of my dog, to think of how dog spelled backwards was God. They explained that how I treat my dog, or any being, or even the environment, is how I'm treating God. I demanded answers for a moment. Why? Why is everything so hard? Ancestors, are you there? How does it all work? I thought I saw my grandmother, my mother's mother, whom I had never gotten to meet. She died before I was born. I was her namesake. I wanted to talk to her. She waved and winked. They told me that I was connected to a vast network of iconoclasts, women throughout history, and also some good men, who'd resisted corruption. They told me that all I ever had to do was recognize my interconnectedness and ask for help, or sense where help was needed in the realm of spirit, in the web of energy I was indelibly part of, and send help to those who were in pain. What you do to others, you do to yourself. You put action forth and create, and it comes back to you. They also told me that it was time for me to start acting as if I had a dick, in the sense of doing, deciding, using my will. It was time to man up. If men did what they pleased, whatever they arbitrarily thought was best, then I must too. It was imperative that I realize I was creating my reality, that everyone was. and that I start consciously creating a better reality to benefit both myself and others. If we did this collectively, the world would improve. They told me to think of the name of the shrooms, penis envy. If a penis is associated with acting, doing, making decisive moves, the drive to manifest desires, then we all have one. We all have the power and responsibility of God. We're all making it up together as we go. I was told that God was real, and God was me, and I was all, and all was God. It was also all up to me, what I wanted to do. But I needed to realize that my intentions had unlimited potential and supporting force behind them. The universe had my back. I needed to have its. I asked, "So you are there, and everything will be all right?" Loki did not seem to think it odd or mind that I was talking to the ceiling, which I really appreciated. This dazzling womb of feminine intelligence, the Earth Mother Gaia, who is us in all her forms, told me that I was doing well. She was proud of me. And yes, of course she was there and I would be all right. I just needed to have confidence and move in the correct directions without hesitating, draw on resources, bring people together, call all the enlightened souls to unite. I was told that I had finally learned the lessons and been granted enlightenment. I thought that sounded extremely pretentious to consider myself enlightened. That is the kind of stuff cult leaders say. When I protested, the beings told me that the final test had been standing up to my job and refusing to endanger my students, my colleagues, or myself. I was willing to risk financial devastation and personal consequences to not betray my conscience. I made the right moral call, achieved the necessary bravery. There was talk of Brahma and Hinduism, which I studied as a child of 10 who wanted to be a philosopher, and I felt released from countless lives of missteps. I had gotten it right at last, I hoped, been granted full access behind the veil, because I had finally leveled up. They told me that I had secret knowledge, that I had always possessed esoteric magic. I was born with it. Magic was real. It had been there all along, and I was part of a long legacy of keeping that magic alive. A thought flashed into my head that made me laugh uncontrollably. The Catholic Church has had a witch in their midst for 4 years and not known it. I knew that I had been placed there on purpose, and that it was time, on a karmic level, to annihilate the forces of hate. My destiny is to oppose, to dismantle them from the inside. This has been building for millennia. Then the cleansing and destruction of ego began. The beings did not shy away from showing me difficult truths. All those I had harmed in my life also appeared, as if parading through the room. Fortunately, this was not the case, but in the moment, I had the impression that whatever I was seeing, the litany of my sins, Loki was also seeing, as if it were projected there on the wall. I realized I was mistaken, but as it was unfolding, I believed that he too was worthy of being brought into the web, and that it was revealing all of this to both of us. I saw all the worst things I had ever done. My most hated exes and most egregious errors drifted through the room like ghosts. I was reminded of the time I beat my ex-husband with a broom until it broke, and then I grabbed a mop. I could feel the blows landing on my own body, knowing that I did it to myself and the universe when I did it to him. I had justified it by saying it was in self-defense, because he had attacked me with a hammer and thrown me into broken glass. But I knew I had gone too far. I had fought back to keep him from hurting me more. But I had become sadistic, cruel. I got in a few more blows than I needed to make him stop. I wanted to make him feel afraid and small, hurt him, get back at him. I could feel those broom and mop lashes as if I were receiving them, and I hated myself for having created suffering. I had a sudden, bizarre willingness to be beaten and crucified, if it would rid the world of such pain being caused, to redeem it all. Could the Christians have been on to something after all? I had never had a desire to be crucified before. The beings told me that I was no better or worse than people who believed in a Christian God. They showed me people who were deeply sincere in their religiosity and did understand important truths. I saw my principal, my dean, one of my favorite students, all of them devout, all of them flawed, but all of them trying. I saw bullies, Trump, violent brutes, and I was them, and they were me. We were all doing the best we could, and we all had failed. But we were all loved, all part of the greater whole. If I could not see myself in even an arrogant Christian, I could not see the bigger picture. Yet I needed to root out where we were not doing enough, where we were wrong, where we had become complacent. I went through this expiation for what felt like lifetimes. The foolish, limiting, self-defeating things I had been doing were transmitted to me. Lies I had told, mostly lies I had told myself. Times I had been selfish and taken shortcuts. Words spoken in anger. Times I absolutely did the wrong thing. I knew I was forgiven, but I also knew I had to do better. Again, thoughts about penises. If you have a dick, which you do, whether woman or man or neither or all of the above, if a dick metaphorically means the ability and right to create, then what are you going to do with it? This turned into a surge of power that felt like electricity, like I had been plugged into a higher voltage. My body almost vibrated with this power. It was divine power, goddess power, and I knew that with this power came great responsibility. It was crucial that I begin to act, to put forth what I wanted to manifest in the world, and to take care of others. It flashed to thoughts about setting the alarm clock and deciding when you would get up. How that simple choice then rippled into what would you choose next. If you remembered the web during your day, you could follow it from orb to orb, if you thought of the orbs as people who needed you and whom you needed. The alarm clock became a symbol for how we really are just making it all up. You set your clock and go from there. But you must do it. You must decide. You must set your own alarm and wake your own self. I tried to explain this to Loki, but he didn't quite get it. We started joking about how we had no idea what time to set the clock for. Not a clue. The beings told me that my mission in this life was to fight the patriarchy, that was why I was on the planet. I just hadn't realized my power yet. They told me that I was powerful beyond measure. I knew that this trip was my reward for continuing to seek, for not giving up even when I had felt hopeless and like I was screaming into a void, for trying to believe in something greater even when I was becoming an atheist, for wanting and attempting to do the right thing, to not just settle for petty ego, to keep at it even after I fucked up. All of that searching finally let me through to the other side. I intuitively knew that I would come out of the trip kinder, more compassionate toward others, but also braver, more confident. A floating apparition of my fabulous, flamboyantly gay cousin Apollo, whom I hadn't seen in years, but was close with when I was younger, appeared in the room and said he was going to be my guide. He brought humor to it. I felt at ease with him there. Maybe he was actually there in spirit, or maybe he was just part of the vision. Either way, He said he was going to teach me more about why I should develop penis envy and about misuse of the will. Then I began seeing the penises. Everywhere I looked, there was something phallic, and it morphed into a cartoon version of itself as a dick. My eyes darted from light switch to lamp pole to knob to a line in the wall. Everything was penises. Then it showed me all the things that were vaginas. The lampshade, the nervous girl cat who came timidly to lie by me, the slot in the door frame where the latch, which was, of course, a penis, went in. I was under the impression that, almost like pixies playing with me, the universe was teasing me by making me see penises and vaginas to make me laugh. Myriad insights about penises started popping into my head. I listened to the ideas filling my consciousness like an instant download of information. Here a penis, there a penis, everywhere a penis. A spotlight swooped around and pointed them out while circus music played. Apollo was the circus ringleader now, with a top hat. It got me thinking about what a penis really means symbolically. If a penis in our society represents agency, the right to act, and if the men feel entitled, by virtue of their dicks, to decide and do, then for some, their will gets twisted, and their practices with their dicks get pathological. But they feel entitled. They have been socialized to feel that they are mommy's special little boys who get to do whatever they want. The ones with the penises call the shots, and the women are background supporting characters. Like their genitalia, the emotional life of women is expected to go inward. Women are to defer, to retreat, to go back in their holes. The word vagina means a sheath for a sword. It exists to provide protection for something else. If women felt just as entitled as men, if they acted as if they had penises and were equally justified in outwardly exerting their will, how would the world change? Maybe women would bring their ability to feel and heal and change some of the abuses of power. Maybe there could finally be a culture of care. This could also be a solution to the racially motivated violence and oppression the country is hurting from. Apollo showed me precisely what had happened with my father. But this time there was light in the room, and I could see it all. I witnessed sickening moans and a pathetic splurt from Jupiter, then felt the weight of his shame and guilt. Apollo told me that someone had been sick with Jupiter when he was a little boy, and it made him sick. Apollo told me that this cycle could go on and on if people didn't take back their wills and use them properly. I cried and cried. I was curled in the fetal position on the bed, just sobbing. This second answer was more unequivocal than the first. Loki spooned me and was gentle. He wrapped his arm around me, saying that I needed my seatbelt, and held me until I calmed down. It confirmed things for me. There was no uncertainty this time. You might think, that confirms nothing. You thought your gay cousin was floating in the room. You thought ghosts told you you were enlightened. True, but I didn't believe that Apollo was really there, unless in spirit. I knew that he was just part of the vision, probably conjured from my own psyche. Just as I scoffed at being enlightened, and just as I knew Loki and I couldn't actually read each other's minds, as I kept feeling like we could, I was not totally out of my gourd, just mostly. After the trip, I could more or less discern the true from the false. But in that memory, which I now have, whether it was created or already there, I could hear Jupiter, feel his breath, smell him. He smelled like cum. It was beyond gross. It was what I had never been able to face, that locked room in my mind. This vision had the tinge of memory to it, of truth, not the tinge of lies. I was serene enough, in the more egoless state that the mushrooms had put me in, that I could stand to feel it, but it still hurt. I ran to hug my dog Cerberus and talk to her for a while, sitting on her chase bed with my arms wrapped around her, apologizing for times I had been impatient or gruff, saying I would try to do better. Cerberus wagged her tail, looked right in my eyes, and seemed to understand every word. Much like after the first time I relived the ickiness of my father jacking off onto my back while poking my orifices, I again questioned if perhaps I had been shown a false vision. Was the worst fear just becoming more elaborate in its nastiness? Or could hallucinogens really expand my mind and help me make peace with an unknown that had haunted me for over 3 decades? Maybe it could. Stranger things have happened. The answer was definitive enough for me. If I'm wrong, sorry, Jupiter, but I don't think I am. If I'm right, I forgive you. You did what was done to you, but don't you dare ever do it to anyone else. You have a responsibility to make sure the buck stops with you. If you did this to my siblings too, or the grandchildren you now have, and have cleverly, diabolically covered it up, then may the Furies rip you to shreds. I hold the feminine face of the divine, the qualities of nurturing and generosity and peace and love, in high regard. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in justice. How can there be peace without justice? No justice, no peace, the protesters had chanted. To take the innocence of a child and replace it with being used as a sexual object, that is a special kind of evil. I have forgiven Jupiter, but I still wouldn't mind to see him tortured, along with Kavanaugh and Epstein. Even though I'm aware that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I sometimes fantasize about the Furies taking revenge on people who really do deserve it. I like to picture hissing, winged, scaly monster women messing with the minds of low-life men, with racists, homophobes, and Trump, either to teach them a lesson or just fuck with them like they callously fucked with others. I enjoy thinking that these avenging female spirits from the underworld do exist and go after the pedophiles and rapists and Nazis. But I must rid myself of hatred just as others must. Maybe I'll eventually evolve past that desire for Jupiter and others to pay. I try to leave it to karma or the Furies these days. I used to make comic strips about my father dying in excruciating ways as a child. That might be enough of a red flag that I had such animosity toward him. He'd get impaled on a spike, or be dismembered, or fall in a bottomless pit. Jupiter, sexual predator extraordinaire, you put that hate in me. Nymphs, daughters, what's the difference? Take them for your pleasure if you want them, right? $100 check from Jupiter for Christmas turned into 50 as I got older. The hush money was not nearly sufficient. He likely would laugh at me, deny it, and call me delusional again if I told him what I saw while under the magical spells. And in return, I would ask why he never wanted to be around me. Did I remind him of what he did? Was it easier to not have to look at me and remember that I was a living, breathing human being? All that time, I thought that Jupiter wanted nothing to do with me because there was something wrong with me. What if it were just his own conscience? What if I were a blameless victim? What if I had been an innocent, flawless child? And what if I could let it go because I realized I didn't even want him in my life? I know my truth now. I will never try to have a relationship with Jupiter again, so I do not mind to tell this truth. I do not like him. He did not make me feel loved. He had my whole life to make me feel loved, but he just never got around to it. Juno, while not perfect, does love me and has consistently been there for me. Even if Jupiter didn't molest me, a possibility I'm still willing to consider as a long shot, he's been a supremely shitty dad. I'm allowed to feel that. I'm allowed to be hurt by it. And I'm allowed to want men to do better. Let's start there, dudes. It's setting the bar low, but can we go for dads, don't molest your daughters, as a commandment? The Bible didn't have that one. Could we as a human race agree on that as a bare minimum? How about dogs, too? Could don't rape children and animals be a reasonable place to begin? We'll build from there. I am a daughter of Jupiter. That makes me a princess. My name means princess, but I want to be a queen. Ladies, let's pull out our magic wands. It's time for us to be magicians in our own right.